Okay, so I've pretty much done everything except I've done $400 builds, but I haven't done a $400 full setup. So, you know, now I'm going to be doing a 400 full setup. So, the difference between a $400 build versus a $400 setup, obviously, it's pretty obvious. $400 build, I'm just including the PC components itself, so no case, no monitor especially, no keyboard, no mouse, just the basic PC. And I'm assuming you're obviously going to add everything else that technically you don't, but technically is not part of the PC itself. PC setup, on the other hand, is including everything. So we are including the monitor, which you do need. We are including the case. We are including the keyboard, the mouse, CPU, cooler, everything. So instead of just the PC itself, we're now including everything for a full setup. So with that being said, let's start it off with my monitor. I'm going to be going for, also, I say this in every video, if times were better and parts were easier to get, then you most likely would be able to get GPUs for cheaper. But because of how expensive parts are, you won't be able to get GPUs for those cheap prices that you would normally be able to get GPUs for. So, with that being said, we want to go for the, even though this is only a $400 build, we still, when $400 build, $400 setup, we still want to get a 1080p monitor. And I want to go reputable for the monitor, so it's not some low quality monitor. So I want to go for a Dell monitor and something like the P2217H for $35. You know, definitely fits this. I mean, it's 1080p, 60 hertz. And yeah, I mean, the monitor looks decent, as you can see, and it's a Dell, so it's reputable. So yeah, that's what we'll start off with. So now that we have a monitor, now we need our keyboard and mouse. So because this is 400, I want to get basically Corsair everything, because Corsair is a high-end brand. So yeah, so I'm gonna get my case next actually. So we're gonna go for the Corsair 200R, the Corsair Carbide 200R full ATX case because it supports ATX components, and you know it's Corsair. It's a pretty nice case actually. Yeah, it's pretty nice. Might additionally want to get an extra fan because I think this doesn't come with any fans, but you know, technically don't need that. So yeah. So we'll add that. Now, for a CPU cooler, we're going to go for the Corsair A70. Pretty good budget heatsink, you know. It's nothing fancy, but you know it's made by Corsair, so it's still a reputable brand. Um, we're gonna keep that Corsair theme going on with this because Corsair is a pretty decent brand. So we're gonna go for a Corsair mouse and keyboard. Because Corsair makes some pretty good, relatively budget keyboard and mice, but it still has that Corsair quality to it. So it's still good quality for not that much money. And we get a full RGB mouse for 15 bucks, pretty good. Especially because this mouse, the Harpoon, I think its MSRP is 50, but since it's used, we're getting it for 15. Now we want the Corsair keyboard. So we want something like a K55. It's a Well, its MSRP is 50, but we'll probably be able to get it for cheaper now that's a bit older. And you know, yeah, for 15 bucks we can get it. And you know, it's full RGB. It's made by Corsair, and yeah, it looks pretty nice if I do say so myself. Yeah. So that's going to be our keyboard. So now we have yeah, we pretty much added all the unnecessary, well, all the components we usually don't include in our PC builds. The case, the monitor, the heatsink, the mouse and the keyboard. Usually we don't include that, but since there's a full setup, we're including that. So now we basically just need to build our full PC. So I'm gonna go for the Intel Xeon E5 2660 for a CPU. Pretty good CPU for $14 because it's 8 cores and 16 threads. LGA 2011 motherboard to house our CPU. Yeah, 25 bucks. Now we need our RAM, and keeping up with this Corsair theme, we're going to go for a Corsair RAM as well, because they make pretty good RAM for cheap prices. So we want 8 gigabytes of RAM for a $400 setup. Yeah, 20 bucks for 8 gigabytes of dual channel RAM made by Corsair. Pretty good. You might be concerned by DDR3, but we only have a DDR3 motherboard anyway, so yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. Now for the SSD. I'm gonna go low storage for the SSD. Because the SSD is just gonna be for the OS. So something like the 16 gigabyte SanDisk M.2 SSD. 16 gigabytes is nothing, so obviously I'm not going to be storing games on this. This is just for the OS itself. And for, I believe Windows 10 installation takes 10 to 11 gigabytes. So yeah, and then you have 5 gigabytes left to download your web browser and maybe Microsoft Word or something. And yeah, all your games obviously going to be on that 1 terabyte hard drive that we're also going to add to this build. Yeah, I just want the OS to feel snappy. And I don't want the OS to boot off of this slow hard drive, so we might as well just spend the extra $4 to make the OS boot a lot faster. So yeah, 15 bucks for this 1 terabyte hard drive. Okay, and now we have our hard drive. Now I believe that is everything except the GPU. I'm not mistaken. Oh, we need our power supply, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna go for a Corsair power supply, once again keeping with that Corsair theme. We don't need too much wattage for this build. Low wattage power supply is more than enough. Yeah, 25 bucks for 430 watt Corsair power supply. 430 watts should be good enough for this build. Yeah, it's made by Corsair and it's only 20 bucks, 25 bucks. So yeah, we'll add that. And it's ATX too. So now that we have our power supply, now all we need is the GPU. So we're gonna go for an RX 580. And this is what I meant by GPU prices being insane. That's why we're gonna go a bit over budget. GPU prices were better, then obviously we wouldn't be spending 267. You're spending like 167 for an RX 580. So that does add quite a bit to our budget. And yeah, that's the primary reason we went quite over 400 and ended up spending 483, just because of the awful GPU prices right now. Overall though, you know, for 480 bucks, so still not quite a $500 setup, so I'd still call it a $400 setup roughly if GPU prices were better and we weren't spending 267 on our RX 580. We really should be spending that much for like a GTX 1070 or 1070 Ti even, but not for an RX 580. But okay, there's no point complaining about that right now. But yeah, for $400 when GPU prices are insane, we managed to get a 1080p monitor, a Corsair case, a Corsair power, Corsair CPU cooler, a Corsair mouse, Corsair keyboard, and both of which support RGB, so it's still gonna look colorful. Got an 8-core 16-thread CPU. We got 8 gigabytes of Corsair RAM. We got an SSD, so the OS can feel snappy. We got a 1 terabyte hard drive, and we got a power supply made by Corsair also. And we got that RX 580. That is way too overpriced. Yeah, I mean, 1080p might be a bit low, but the RX 580 is meant for 1080p gaming anyway, so I think a 1080p monitor should be fine. And for 35 bucks for a Dell 1080p monitor, you can't really complain. So yeah, overall, I think given the current situation, I can recommend this with caution. Yeah, and the E5 2660 isn't gonna bottle like the RX 580 if that's what you're worried about. Yeah. I mean, not like amazing or anything, but I think it is roughly recommendable. Roughly.